Celebrating the baby boomer lifestyle. This is Boomer Life with Sterling Fox on AM 650.
Welcome back to the program on Boomer Life. Today we're talking about some of the latest innovations in hearing. We're talking about the inner workings of the ear. Our guest is audiologist Dr. Ted Venema. And Dr. Ted's colleague, Dr. Herman Lee in Vancouver. Dr. Ted, by the way, is with NextGen and Mainland Hearing. And Dr. Ted's colleague, Dr. Herman Lee, over at Mainland Hearing, Metrotown office there on Kingsway. Well, he conducted a hearing test on yours truly a few weeks ago after some nudging and prompting. Okay, it was a sharp elbow from Mark Hambley, the president of Mainland and NextGen Hearing, and his buddy here, Dr. Ted. Well, they didn't, hold a gun to my ear or anything, but they were pretty insistent that I get in the game, Sterling. Get in the game. Get a hearing test. Okay, so I did. I really enjoyed it. Yeah. Dr. Lee was a nice man, and I had never had a hearing test before. I was told there would be no blood, so I didn't have to worry about even bringing a Band-Aid. And I really enjoyed the experience.
Okay.
Just the walkthrough. But I wanted to ask you a quick question before we get to the nuts and bolts of the hearing. And this refers to a confusion. Maybe it's a myth, maybe not. I just need an answer. The connection between the inner ear, Dr. Ted, and hearing and the inner ear and balance. Are they the same thing?
They come from the same organ. The cochlea, which is the Greek word for snail shell.
Okay.
See, you've got the outer ear, which is your ear canal and eardrum.
Right.
Then you have the middle ear, which is the three little bones, the hammer, the anvil, and the stirrup. Okay. And then behind those, or in the center of those, is the tiny little cauliflower-shaped thing called your balance organs.
Oh.
And also your cochlea, or snail shell organ. Now, those are all filled with tiny hair cells, and they all share the same fluid. Now, balance is critical for life. Okay?
Absolutely.
Hearing is the first sense to begin in utero, in after gestation, and the last sense to finish developing.
Oh, really?
Yep. And balance begins first.
So all these people who are playing music to their babies while they're pregnant and stuff, they're on to something.
They're on to something.
Interesting, eh? Okay.
Now, balance is critical to life, and balance begins at around 3 weeks after conception.
Okay.
And, even the line on fish that you see on the side of a fish, that's the primitive balance organ. That's how fish know how to swim in schools. Anyway, balance begins first, and it's critical to life. Hearing is like a luxury sense built on top of balance. In evolutionary terms, hearing comes after balance.
Okay.
And hearing begins in gestation. The sense of hearing begins after the sense of balance starts. So, the deaf will be the first to tell you they don't need hearing to live. Hearing isn't essential to life. Balance is.
Absolutely.
But balance is a complicated sense. It uses your vision, it uses the balance organs of your inner ear, and it also uses tiny little muscle filaments that tell you where your limbs are in space. So, for example, if you've been caught drinking and driving, and a cop has you on the side of the road and says, close your eyes and put your hand out to the side. Okay, now touch your nose.
The standard roadside
touch
sobriety
your nose.
test.
And here the drunk person's doing, knocking my headphones off. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I had a couple of swigs before I came in.
No.
Yeah,
it's absolutely true. You watch the guy and he smacks himself on the forehead or misses completely.
Correct. So balance is vision, inner ear organs, and tiny muscle filaments that tell you where your limbs are in space without you looking.
Okay. So
balance
it's all
is a complicated
part of the package.
sense.
Interesting.
And then hearing is built out of balance, as a luxury sense out of balance.
All based on the inner ear.
All based on the inner ear.
Now, another quick question before we get to the hearing test, and this, in fact, may relate to my hearing test. When I was a little boy, I used to get earaches, a lot of earaches. And I'm wondering, is that that pretty identifiable history of earaches when I was a child, is that a clue that in later years I might have some hearing issues?
Not really. It's a good question, but it's not really. Earaches are caused by an infection to your middle ear, the little tiny room about as big as a sugar cube with the 3 little bones in it.
Okay.
That's normally filled with air, just like your outer ear has air in it. But when that gets infected, it gets filled with pus. And now you've got a bulged eardrum, and that hurts.
It sure does.
And that's called an earache, and that's called otitis. Oto is ear, itis is inflammation.
Okay.
Media, otitis media. Media means middle.
Okay.
Middle ear infection. And no, it has really precious little to do with the type of hearing loss that develops later in life, which is a nerve hearing loss. And that's damage to those little hair cells inside your cochlea or inner ear.
Okay.
That's what elderly people get. That's what noise causes as well. But having a predisposition to earaches and ear infections really doesn't have anything to do with that kind of hearing loss.
Is deafness genetic?
Can be. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. It usually is.
Okay.
Yep. It's genetic. Oh, it can be caused too, of course.
Right.
But normally, yeah, it can be genetic. Yeah. Hereditary.
Okay. Well, it's all just really useful information. You know, we all people are listening to us right now.
Yeah.
And don't we just take our hearing for granted?
We do.
And just cruising along in the car, listen to the guys talk on the radio.
Yep.
It's what you do.
Vision gets almost all the attention.
Right.
You know, eyes and glasses and contact lenses. The public knows what nearsightedness, farsightedness. They've heard these terms.
Sure.
But they don't know what conductive hearing loss and sensory neural hearing loss are.
No.
And conductive hearing loss, by the way, is what earaches will give you.
Oh.
It's blocking of the conduction of sound. You know, it's just like an electrical wire conducts electricity.
So if you get, but do adults get earaches like
Not as
I
much.
used to when I was a little guy?
You know why? Because your face grows longer.
Oh.
And because your face grows longer as you get into teenage and adulthood,
Right.
the tubes, the eustachian tubes that connect the back of your throat to your middle ear, you know how when you blow your nose you can feel it in your
Sinuses,
ears?
sure, yeah.
Those tubes become more vertical in adulthood. So you
Ah.
get gravity working in your side to drain them of infection.
Interesting.
Little babies, you know, theirs are pretty horizontal. So it's very easy for infection from your throat to get to your middle ear.
Which is why little kids really get messed up on airplanes too, right?
Yes, they get messed up. Even mothers who nurse, when they're lying down and the baby's laying down
Right.
and you're horizontal, it's very easy whenever you swallow to get that old milk up into the ears. Not a good idea.
Interesting.
Okay?
Interesting.
Ear infections happen more in children because of the shape of their skull.
Wow.
They have a shorter skull.
When
And adults have a longer one.
we're going to talk about my hearing test, but I also reminded you of my first memory as a child of my first visual test. I was in grade school, probably grade 1 or 2.
Yep.
And I can actually remember. Put your right hand over your right eye.
Yeah.
So at what age, in a perfect world, Dr. Ted, would we have our children first hearing tested?
Ideally, as soon as you're born. You know, infant hearing screening programs are being developed in certain jurisdictions.
Okay.
It's not universal, but that's the best. Because if you can identify hearing loss in an infant, you can right away remedy their acquisition or learning of speech and language.
Sure.
You got to hear it in order to learn how to speak and talk.
Right.
Okay. And that in the oral speaking world, hearing is critical. So if you can assess and find out, you know what, from day one, yep, this baby has hearing loss. Right away, you can amplify or fit hearing aids on that infant, believe it or not.
Interesting.
And that kid will acquire language according to more normally in the steps that he or she should.
Wow.
So it's really oftentimes, because hearing loss is invisible, it's not detected early enough.
Right, right.
And so you get these kids that are failing out in school, and hearing is like the last thing to be looked at. Finally, someone might clue in, gee, maybe Tommy can't hear.
Right, right.
Gee, and then he goes for a test, and sure enough, you got a whopper of a hearing loss. Well,
Right.
no wonder.
Yeah.
But, you know, hearing loss is masked by, in the elderly, people call it dementia. They'll call it senility, Alzheimer's. And to be sure that those things happen to the elderly, but
Absolutely.
it certainly doesn't help to be isolated and alone
Right.
and having hearing loss in the midst of that. I
Right.
mean, what's better than to keep active socially? And communication relies on hearing for the hearing culture. I'm not going to speak for the deaf culture.
No, it's interesting.
But
You know,
it's-
I just had a conversation a couple of days ago, Dr. Ted, with the CEO of the Parkinson's Society of BC. We here at AM 650 are partnering with them. They got a big activity month going on.
Good.
And with them, it's all about activity. It's
Yep.
all about physical and mental activity
Exactly.
being the best defense
Exactly.
against the onset of
That's
Parkinson's. There's no cure,
Yep.
but there are management techniques,
Yep.
and activity is a big part
It
of
is.
it, isn't
It is. Sure it is. Interaction is critical. And communication is interaction.
Right.
Hearing is critical, but it's the last thing people tend to notice.
So with our children,
Yeah.
if we haven't, it hasn't occurred to us to have their hearing tested. I have 3 children, Dr. Ted. I don't think Carol and I ever tested our children's hearing. But now that was because I suppose they could hear us.
Yeah, and
we would. I'm in the kind of audio business, not like you, but hearing's critical to me, and I certainly would have noticed, as would their mother, if there were hearing deficiencies in our children. And then, of course, we would have done something.
The television would be up loud.
Exactly.
Kid wouldn't be hearing what you were saying.
But you're suggesting, as a matter of course, and again, by way of establishing that baseline,
it's good.
The younger we test our children's hearing for the first time, the more on track we have, and the better way we have of measuring their progress as they age.
Especially if you're noticing that they're having problems in school.
Right.
If a child's having difficulty in school, being suspected of learning disabilities or whatever, rule out hearing loss.
Right.
Get that checked so you know you're not sitting there wandering in the dark. Information.
Exactly.
It's all about information.
Well, let's get back to that hearing test then, because I sat down with Dr. Lee at the Mainland Hearing Office in Metrotown. It took me about 45 minutes. A little pleasant chit-chat to begin with. He basically explained what he was going to do. And there was that sound treat. I called it a soundproof room, but it's a sound treater. It's very a dead room.
Yeah, it's fairly quiet.
And so I go in, I sit down in a comfortable chair, and I put on the headset, and he puts me through a whole series of tests. And so describe, because it took a half an hour. I was surprised at how long it took, but there were the usual beep and beep and beep. And in his case, when you do testing, you have the testee put up his or her hand.
That's what I do. But
Dr. Lee has one of those little Jeopardy buttons.
That's right. The same thing. As
soon as you hear it, you press the Jeopardy button.
That's right.
And so I'm a big fan of Jeopardy. I was happy to play with the button.
Yeah.
So I was cool. So that's what he did. He started first and foremost with a series of tones.
That's right. You say to the person, do you have one ear better than the other? And most people say, it's not really, or whatever. Then I'd flip a coin. You could start with the left. You could start with the right.
Right.
Usually you test someone's better ear first, but that regardless. So let's say I'm going to test your right ear first. I'll put the headphones on you. I say I'm going to give you tones. Every time you hear one, let me know by raising a hand or pushing that button.
Right.
Even if the tones become very soft or faint, still let me know, because I want to find out the softest level you can hear. Once I'm done all testing your right ear, I'll switch over to your left, okay?
Right.
All right, the person says, go for it. Okay, so you close the door. He can see through the window. I can see through the window.
Right.
And I try not to give the guy the clue that I'm pushing a button.
Right.
So I start in the center of the hearing range at, say, 1,000 cycles per second. 1,000
Something
hertz.
everybody pretty much can hear. Right.
And so, that's a frequency that's in the center of your frequency range.
Okay.
So they test that frequency, and I'll start it out at a level you can hear. Yep, you push the button. I lower it by 10 decibels, present it again. Yep, you push the button, lower it, until you no longer press the button. And then I start raising.
I found myself pressing the button when I thought I heard it.
And here's how we get around that.
Okay.
I lower it by 10, and each time you hear it, you push the button. When you no longer hear it, I start raising up by 5, raising it by, and boop, now you push the button. Okay, I'm going to go down by 10 decibels again. You don't hear it. I'm going to go up by 5, up by 5. Yep, you press the button. Boom, gotcha.
And that's
Here's the kicker.
That's my low hearing threshold.
That's your hearing threshold.
Right.
For that particular tone.
Ah.
And here's the catch. I've got to get you at 2 ascending. When I'm going up by 5, I better get you at the same decibel level. Okay? Twice. I better get you twice. So I'm going down by 10, you don't hear it. You hear it. Down by 10, you don't hear it. Up by 5, you don't. Up by 5, boom, you push the button. Down by 10, you don't. Up by 5, you don't. Up by 5, boom, you push the button. Gotcha.
So you're double checking everything.
Yes, because people say just what you said. Sometimes I'm not sure.
Right.
So I'll just think I heard it and I'll push the button.
Well,
we have ways and means of getting around that.
Well, you certainly do. But again, and all I was doing was I was just really, I closed my eyes and I was really focused on hearing something. And I knew that he was doing subliminal levels. He
Sure.
was now down below where I could hear.
And then he creeps up to where you do again.
That's right. And a couple of times, I think I pressed the button because I think
exactly.
I heard
we call that a false positive.
Okay, and that's why you double check everything.
People come into a test with a bias. You'll get your little Miss McGillicuddy who thinks the test is pass or fail, like you were talking about.
I know.
And she just wants to do everything right. So she, by gum, is raising her hand constantly. She's guessing. And then you might get your farmer Herb, who's only going to raise his hand when he's good and sure he hears it.
Okay.
So you got to tease that bias back to the center too. So there's an art to it.
Well, I was just going to say, we were talking and kind of joking earlier about because it's a test. Gosh, how'd you do, Sterling? Did you pass or fail?
Yep.
This is the first question I was asked when I got home.
Yep.
By someone who should know better.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, that's the way we react to being tested. So if we know we're going for a test, our bias is to pass.
That's right. So you try as hard as you can.
Yeah.
At any rate, we test the degree, the loudness it takes in decibels for you to hear each of seven different pitches, from low in the bass to mids to highs or trebles. 7 different pitches. We test the loudness it takes for your ear to just barely hear each and every one of those pitches.
Okay.
And that gives us an idea of the degree or amount. You see, you might have different hearing loss for different pitches. You might have good hearing in the bass and crummy for the treble.
Right.
Someone might have the other way around.
Sure.
So that's why hearing aids, too, they don't make just the sounds all louder. They're almost like equalizers on a stereo. You can raise or lower bass or mids or trebles on hearing aids, because people's hearing loss might differ in bass or mids and trebles. So it's the shape of the hearing loss as well.
Need to take a quick break here. Our guest, always a pleasure to have Dr. Ted Venema here from Next Gen Hearing and Mainland Hearing. And by the way, to learn more about both of these operations, Next Gen, by the way, is spelled NEXGEN Hearing, and of course Mainland Hearing, both .com, nextgenhearing.com and mainlandhearing.com. Terrific websites, lots of good information about hearing tests, hearing aids, and all of that sort of thing. And we're back with audiologist Dr. Ted Venema here on Boomer Life right after this quick time out.
Celebrating the baby boomer lifestyle. This is Boomer Life with Sterling Fox on AM 650.